don't
that's
mind.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm the
So
third.
Francesca, you can take your seat here and
Did I understand correctly?
No, but
No,
that's
okay,
not-
okay.
You don't want to be.
Yes.
She's changing a thing the order, but it must be a reason. I don't know why.
I mean, anyways,
No, it's
doesn't matter.
No, it matters. You're more
No, that will
central.
be part of the introductory remarks. We will exactly, but just with she's the third speaker, so we will have first. So first will be Elise speaking, then we have Jem, then we have Anne, and then yeah, it's getting to. Fantastic, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's.
What time is there, though?
So that
At the time, now that you're asking me, it's funny. So that clock is not fine.
there's a clock, but it's a bit precise.
Okay.
There is
Yeah,
a
it's
clock
pretty hard to
here,
ever. Yeah.
but it's 29, so it's a bit forward. Thank you. Shem, are you Turkish?
Yes, yes, yes.
You
How
shut
did
them
you?
down. I give
Because of
you
me?
a thumbs
Yes.
up.
You have
we
colleagues?
never
I
touch
know
mics.
many people are from Turkey.
Okay.
And Shem.
You're working with a academician called Jem as well.
Yes, academics.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
In which institutions you really work
I am
in
based
Turkey?
in No, I am. The acronym I don't know is the Polytechnic of Ankara,
Okay, okay.
but the acronym I am.
Not Middle East Technical University.
No,
Okay.
but in Sweden, where I'm based, there are many Turkish people
Yeah.
that come, and you're also many people. No?
Yeah.
How many millions are you? Do you
80
know?
millions of us. I mean,
80
excluding
million people
the
Turkey.
expats.
Excluding.
And where are you from?
From Italian. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Just came back from Rome.
So
by
much
the way.
for your support.
I guess that the weather was temperature was pleasant.
Very pleasant.
Napoli was actually very hot. Yeah, 37 degrees in the shadow. Okay.
Okay, you're Danish or?
Maybe you can just let them know that we're about to start. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's becoming unbearable in summer, even for me.
It's interesting that you say that so you are using and developing internally. And it seems like most big financial institutions and regulators are not
Yes.
building in-house teams. Well,
When I say building in-house, we are not building a
For 2 years,
in-house,
and we see.
yeah.
but we are building our infrastructure, we are building some specific software
Yeah.
and for machine learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Should we start to be very Swiss and
I think it's very though.
Exactly.
It's exactly very.
That's what you tell us.
people are still coming in? Okay, that's why we're going to take a seat. We're just waiting for everyone to take a seat, then we'll start. So, I think we're going to start. A very warm welcome to everyone. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome you here to the debate on AI as an enabler for sustainable finance. Can it keep the promise? We have been talking about AI in sustainable finance for the past years quite a lot. And I think it's now the time to take a step back and think a bit through, okay, what has actually been achieved in terms of what we were aiming for, also in terms of what were the promises that could be kept, but also the downsides, and also new risks that we might face now, in addition to anticipated risks and how we might have solved them. I'm Julia Bingler. I'm chairing this session today with a great panel. I'm super happy to have you all here. It's a wide mix of people from practice and also regulation. I work at the Sustainable Finance Group at the University of Oxford, focusing on natural language processing for sustainable finance and broader AI-based methods. I'm very happy to have with us today a distinctive panel, and we will start with some inputs from each of you to basically set the scene where everyone stands right now in terms of how AI has been useful or not in their own daily life, like work life mainly, potentially also in daily life. We can talk about that in the break. And then in addition, talk about the main challenges that people at the panel and then later on also in the room have been facing when using AI for investment decisions, be it data sourcing, data scaling, data verification, but also in terms of structuring products, portfolios, and potential risks of misinformation and misinterpretation. And we will also speak about the looming issues with a considerable scale-up of AI and energy-related consumption. However, we will also talk about the opportunities that it presents. We learned this morning that progress is not linear. That's also correct for AI. That's also correct for sustainable finance and for AI in sustainable finance. But still, we need to think through, okay, is it only a nice-to-have tool that, for example, enables us to have better efficiency gains? Or can it be a true game changer, an enabler of products, of ideas, of investment use cases that we couldn't have thought of or implemented before? So with this, I'm happy to kick us off with the first introductory remarks from Lisa Pretorius. She is Chief Sustainability Analysis Officer at Matter, a company that's working on sustainability-related data using natural language processing.
Thanks, Julia. And maybe just a caveat. So we'll speak a little bit more, I will speak a little bit more as a company that's developing AI solutions, but of course it is also being used internally to transform the way that we work. But just from a developer point of view and the way that we see AI tools being used with our clients, which are mainly institutional investors, but also other financial institutions, consultants, intermediaries, we can think of maybe how these tools can be used across the investment lifecycle and use that as a context to ask where it can be most useful. So very simply, first is taking a whole bunch of unstructured data, structuring it, making it into something useful as raw data. Then we typically create some sort of rules or modeling or analysis on top of that to answer some question about, it could be climate transition risk, nature risk, etc. Then that's applied by the users in the context of some sort of portfolio security to make a decision, an investment decision, to apply screening criteria, look for signals, build a benchmark. And then ultimately there's a whole bunch of post-trade needs like reporting and monitoring of portfolios. And AI can be applied across all of these. I would argue that not all the same amount of sort of usefulness and need across all of these. So we suggest two kind of litmus tests. So the one is, will the results be falsifiable? And the second, is it necessary? So on falsifiability, we've taken the view not to build any AI applications on anything that can't be falsified. And that basically means, can you look at the answer and decide for yourself whether it's right or wrong? So something like CO2 emissions of a company, we can go look at the annual report or sustainability report and see that an answer is wrong. For us, this decision has been mostly because, black box methodologies, opaque methodologies, insights that are hard to kind of unpack and understand where they come from is already a problem in sustainable finance. And if not implemented carefully, AI has the potential to make this worse, so falsifiability. And then is it useful? So is it adding anything to use AI in a certain process, or could it just as well be achieved by a good old automated data pipeline? So often what we are looking for is actually speed, automation, scale, quality, and it's not always true that AI is the best route to achieve that. And so I think we've got to think about that. So across the funnel, at least for now, from where I'm standing, AI is most useful at the beginning, so creating making sense out of large amounts of unstructured data and structuring it, and then at the end with monitoring and reporting. So on the unstructured data, yes, typically it will be falsifiable. We can see whether, for example, a CO2 emission is actually what the company has reported. And then is it needed? Yes, if we want to scale. And that's not only because we're dealing with a whole bunch, a lot more data now in terms of types. So not only company reported data, but asset data and geospatial data and news and sentiment and all of these. But even if we were just dealing with company reported data, if we really want to scale that, given the state of how messy company reported data is now and how heterogeneous it is, something like Gen AI models is actually really useful in helping us make sense of that because they're flexible, and some of them are very good at visioning, meaning they can make sense of text and tables, etc. So because of the state of messy reported data, Gen AI models are specifically very useful for us in that. When we move further along the pipeline, so away from kind of the raw structured data into more analysis and framework building and portfolio analytics, it becomes harder to falsify as you move up that chain. And so there we've always got to sort of ask the question, is it really necessary and is it the right tool here? So it is much harder to falsify the conclusion that one company's transition plan is better than another's, unless the components of that analysis, the ingredients, are made very clear and are falsifiable in themselves. And those components may be a company's emissions, targets, governance, metrics, etc. And if it's made very clear how these are put together in a methodology to come to a conclusion. But if these things are true, then it's actually much quicker and easier and safer in terms of predictable outcome to just use a rules-based pipeline. And you don't actually need AI for that. When the rules set and the input data becomes extremely large, then it will become better to go the Gen AI route or another AI route rather than trying to build rules-based models. So I think it's really about us understanding where we need to use AI, especially given the cost. And then because I've spoken quite a lot now, I'll just leave something on the table for later if we can pick up. We also risk a little bit of a rubbish in, rubbish out risk because the state of data as our input is still very messy, and it would be great to talk about that too.
Thank you so much, Lise. As a quick follow-up question, I was wondering, you said the falsifiability is key for you, and you also said that Gen AI models are super useful in terms of understanding or checking the messy data. Is it in the end that AI writes reports and reads reports and extracts the data, and we are just basically trying to navigate across different AI agents? Or where do you see the humans in the loop of this exact beginning and end of the data pipeline at the data generation and at the data reporting process?
Definitely a human in the loop.
Where?
Where? Well, I mean, at least from where we're standing, our team is heavily involved, humans, in the extraction and cleaning of the data, both in terms of training the models, but also the model can't get it right every time. And a verifier model will tell us when it's not sure of the answer, and this typically happens because 30% of, let's say, GHG Scope 1 disclosures are actually edge cases in terms of how they've been disclosed in very weird formats and dots and commas that don't make sense, and MT used ambiguously for million tons or metric tons, and all of these things. Then there's sort of millions of these examples across different metrics. So typically the verifier will then tell us it's a verdict 0. It's not quite sure how to do this, and then it'll come to a human. And then we have a whole bunch of QA processes, a whole bunch of tests of whether the annotations are getting us what we need. So we're sort of heavily involved, and maybe that will change over time, but at least for now, in the generation stage.
Thank you so much for these insights. It's super interesting also, I think, for for everyone working in the fields to understand and see, okay, what are good human-in-the-loop strategies, which ones work out, which ones mean actually that we might better just do it all by ourselves, or as you said, with other rule-based pipelines. We now move to someone who is more on the side of like, actually using AI for own investment and projects. Cem Gundogan, he's climate finance and risk expert at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, and I'm really curious to hear what you've learned over the past years when using AI, both in your profession, but also I know that you've been working on it a bit personally as well.
Thank you very much, and welcome all again. And thanks, Lisa, for a comprehensive introduction, which already covered many of the promising, challenging aspects of use of AI in sustainable finance. I'm here representing EBRD, a multilateral development bank, and maybe a quick intro about EBRD and what it does. It basically finances development in the emerging economies in 3 continents. Basically we have a mandate to support market economy transition as well as green transition in many of the difficult to operate geographies in the world. We have been using AI at least as baby steps, experimenting in the last 3 years already in different areas, to be honest. First of all, the amount of climate finance needed all across emerging economies is actually outpacing the current mobilization. So we are currently globally mobilizing 2 trillion, but what is needed is around at the scale of 10 or 12 trillion. So this means there will be a multitude of work for the same amount of people and resources. So we see AI as a strategic enabler to help us to do more in the same time with the same resources. So efficiency gains has been our first priority so far in our pilot implementations, and to give some examples of that, we are using AI-driven tools internally to retrieve knowledge already accumulated in the bank, because there has been hundreds of evaluation reports internally drafted, for example, and lessons learned withdrawn from the implemented projects and programs all across the geographies and different sectors. Our bankers are using, currently actually, it's very recently introduced tool. They are using this tool to withdraw lessons learned in a particular sector and geography to at least establish the foundations more actually stronger than the previous case in their next investment in those areas. Another implementation that we have certain strategies and pledges as a multilateral development bank, one of which is that every investment of EBRD, every project has to be aligned with the objectives of Paris Agreement, for example. And to achieve that, we are conducting a number of green assessments. We call them, we brand them like green assessments. And to speed up these processes, AI has been very instrumental, again, in generating the existing content based on the previous projects, if a similar domain exists, obviously. So it is speeding up our efforts, let's say, in those areas, which is crucially needed. As I said, in 5 years' time, we have to at least fivefold the investments volume. And we also see, we also see some risks and challenges with regards to the use of AI so far, and one of which Lisa already mentioned, black box and unexplainable models that we came across. But I think there are certain advancements in the technology in the recent year, especially, that provides us more tooling to at least see more traceability and explainability in certain areas, and references to ensure integrity and reliability. We also ask the same question to ourselves before implementing any pilot use case in the bank. Does it really add something that an automation or digitalization process cannot? And does it, impact the environment and social environment more than it brings added value. So it is indeed very hard to quantify this, but I'm looking at my colleagues here who are already making research on this area, but we know that sustainability footprint is really big and it's growing rapidly all across the world, the implementation of AI technologies, but on the other hand, there are benefits to that. So we are trying to understand and demand more transparency from our vendors, because we also work with partners in this area, granular data in terms of, how our usage is affecting and producing, cost implications, etc. So this is a valid question for us as well. Human in the loop, for sure. We see EBRD employees as a critical partners to the AI tools rather than solidly AI tool users. So you have to critically question the reliability, source, quality of the data, because there are some persistent issues with regards to data quality. Obviously, AI doesn't solve it magically. So there are, especially lack of data is also another issue in our geographies. AI doesn't solve that problem as well. However, it brings with the new, geospatial foundational models, etc., new information skyrocketing from space, etc. These new data sources alternative data sources are helping with the use of AI to quickly at least bridge some of those gaps in our sector. So maybe for now it's...
Thanks so much, Cem. That's really interesting also to hear in terms of how AI helps your organization internally with the knowledge management. I think that's a super interesting angle, especially in large organizations or where you have usually many people like coming in and out over and over again. I was wondering, as a quick follow-up to you, how you in the end use that information, for example, when deciding strategically what to do with the additional funding that would be required for those for the specific countries you've been talking about. You said there's a lack of data, but at the same time you have some lessons learned. For some of the countries, did AI enable you to structure that decision process to some extent better in a more informed way, or is it more something where you see it's too uncertain, the models are not explainable enough, we don't trust basically what we can learn from them, so we leave it entirely out in the strategy making? Well,
not yet, I can say, because its benefits are not fully materialized yet. But there is a strong promise there. We can see that. But on the other hand, we have already established methodologies which are aligned with the other MDBs as well. So these are not individual, efforts that is going on in the finance sphere. There are also collective efforts to establish robust methodologies. But we see AI so far as a how to say, efficiency improver rather than the strategy maker. And how can I have maybe a more concrete example? We are not at a stage to ask any tool, is this project idea aligned with the Paris Agreement objectives or not? AI can't do that at this moment. But we see a future, we believe in a future in a couple of years, where it can provide you at least an initial glimpse of an early judgment, where a human can take it forward, test maybe fundamental assumptions, and then build towards the final assessment of it. So there will be human, but I think it's quickly advancing. Sometimes we are not able to catch up with the progress of development. That's also another issue, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you so much. AI becoming too quick. That's also a thing to discuss potentially later in the broader discussion round. Just a quick note, there's still an entire row of places available in the front, and I see many people sitting on the left and the right side. For those of you who don't want to turn their heads all the time, there's still space here in the very first row. You're welcome to come and sit here if you like. So, this being said, I would like to shift our focus now to someone actually working on the data extraction side of things at a very hands-on way. Anna Schönauer, she is the co-founder and CEO of Tilt, a company that claims to make emission-related data from SMEs available globally. That's your goal. And I'm really curious to see and hear from you. What have you been learning over the past years when using the tools and data available to close one of the largest data gaps that I think many of us have been facing either in research or in supervision or in investment decisions?
Thanks a lot, Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Anna Schinauer, and I'm representing TILT today, a climate data company for creating data for small, medium enterprises. So when I got the invitation to talk today, I was thinking, okay, I want to start first with explaining a bit better of like how we use AI in creating this climate data for small, medium enterprises. And we do so in different ways, but the most important one is that we are matching different data sources that are out there. So one very crucial part is to match over 20,000 emission factors to 2 million SMEs that we have in our database to calculate total emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions based on these emission factors. Then the second approach that we are taking is then going beyond total emissions and scope 1, 2, and 3, namely really thinking about, okay, what is actually the emission reduction potential of such a small, medium enterprises by linking these activities of small, medium enterprises to climate actions, to also build transition risk plans, for example. And then last but not least, that's very in the beginning, but we are also experimenting a lot with chatbots at the moment because we got a lot of questions also from financial institutions that we work with and using the data on our method and how we calculate these data in the end. And so experimenting here with chatbots to have like also an interactive tool to build also capacity for the ones that want to use the data that we create. So I also summarized some of the learnings that we had over the last 2 years. So we originated from a research project and experimented also very early with natural language processing and AI in general. And some of them was already mentioned, so it's also a good summary of the things that were already discussed. But one key learning that we had is expert knowledge is key. So you need to have a human in the loop. So if it is training the data, if it is validating the model, refining the models, you need this human loop, otherwise AI is not as powerful as it can be. The second, and that's maybe a bit like too technical, but what we really experience right now is, or like recently applied, is that we are using agent AIs. So we have different agent AIs in our chain, and one agent is just being the judge. So it's judging the other agent AIs of how good they are doing their job. And this really increased also quality significantly. And then last but not least, one other learning that also was touched upon already, communication about the models is key. So we getting asked questions about how can we trust this data, how can you ensure that the data quality is good enough, and just being transparent on this and being able to communicate about this was really crucial in the last 2 years that we experienced the work with AI. So I want to I have prepared one more slide, namely questions and challenges, and maybe we can also discuss some of these here on this panel, because also in our team we are really constantly also discussing the use of AI. And the first one is, we as a startup asking the question, okay, what is happening if now the EU AI Act is actually regulating some of our clients, namely financial institutions and banks? Like, what will they require from us of how transparent we need to be with our models, and what do we need to disclose and what not? And I think there's some uncertainty around this still. The second challenge or question that we have is, how much should we rely on commercial and private models? So we are using GPT at the moment still, but asking continuously also the question, okay, shall we shift into alternative open source and more transparent models? And last but not least, the question of the real impact. So we as an impact startup asking the question, okay, does the data that we create with AI actually shift real decision in the end, and can we really reduce emissions? And so AI enabling this real impact here, which I think is crucial to question this outcome from time to time as well. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. I think it's really interesting to also see and hear from you what's your experience in terms of when facing people like you work with, and also especially the people like being SMEs, being basically the ones providing you with the data without immediate benefit to them, because you work with the banks, right? So how do you square that circle? Like, you want something from institutions or from smaller corporations and real family businesses. They need to provide you with information which in the end might to them be detrimental to their performance or whatever, or for credits when getting loans. How do you work with those people, and to which extent do you see the automation of some of the processes, speaking of AI, being like either supportive or detrimental to building trust?
Yeah, really good questions indeed. So first of all, so how we use or create the data, we don't need any outreach in the first place. So it's on the product metrics. So it's like it's still a proxy, it's still like an average, but based on the products of the SME. So we are not asking the SME to give any data, but still I think the overall question still is valuable, because you need to ask the question, okay, if a bank is now using the data and then scoring the SME, might that actually also raise borrowing costs for the SMEs themselves? This is a really good point, and I think what we are really trying to also enable the banks that we work with is to think about opportunities. So not only to think about the risk that is involved, but especially when it comes to an SME, that there are some climate actions that every SME can take and that might also save money in the end. And having this shift of like going from risk to opportunity is something that quite well works with the banks that we talk to, because they do have these SME client relationship as well. Yeah. And then there was like a last thing about trust, right? Like to
which extent whether like using AI and automated models supports building trust, because it's basically could be conceived as something neutral or something that would happen anyway if you ask just ChatGPT. And for you, then you at least customize it? Or does it, in the end, hinder building trust because you might lack the human factor in the interactions?
Yeah, again, so I think it fosters trust in the way that we have one procedure of matching the data sources to each other, and the data is kind of like also handled the same way, so there is no biases in creating the data itself. But then it's also generating mistrust, because how this matching process actually works and how accurate this matching process is, there are a lot of questions about this. So yeah, that's what I meant with really proactively, transparently communicate about like also what is your false positive in matching these products, for example. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. I think, having the data side covered to some extent from your side and also from Lisa's side, and also having spoken about the investment perspective, it's super interesting to see how the regulatory perspective deals with this very emerging trend. Like, I mean, it's two things that came together, AI and sustainable finance, both very fluid areas, both very exciting areas where many things happen all at the same time. So how do you as a regulator make use of that? How do you as a regulator face challenges? I'm super happy to hear the input from Rémi Lecat, who is Deputy Director on Research and Risk Analysis at ACPR and Banque de France.
Thank you very much. So I will present my own opinion. Climate is a major risk, an emerging risk for banks and insurers, and as such has to be quantified, has to be managed as other risks. And the European prudential regulation is actually taking into account that into solvency computation, and we conducted several climate stress tests of banks and insurers to ensure that this risk was correctly managed and taken into account. We are also taking into account investor protection, so looking at financial product documentation and disclosure reports. So concretely, we have many use cases for AI with that respect of this different mission. So to handle the, data, to handle text also, because we have a lot of reports to treat, and documentation. But we also face significant hurdles, as I will mention. So we have many concrete use cases. The first ones are with the handling of data. So we need AI to produce data. So as mentioned already, to produce Scope 3 emission data, so to produce data for missing data from what we get from other providers, to assess also data quality and spot outliers, to actually build stress test scenarios and generate these scenarios. We also use it in data and statistical analysis. It is extremely efficient in coding, of course, but also it's used for statistical analysis. And then one other element, rather on the NLP side, is the use for text, report, documentation. So we have to check if the required information is there. We have to extract specific information. And we could think to go a bit further and even try to assess the maturity of institution with regard to this different dimension of the regulation with LLM. We can use it also to analyze financial product documentation to identify misleading information, for example. We can use it for on-site inspection to go through internal documentation such as written procedures. We can use it as a search tool through climate-oriented regulation, and to build press and social media monitoring oriented on climate risk. So there are many use cases, and now we face some significant hurdles. So some are current hurdles, some are future hurdles, I would say. So regarding current hurdles, there is the most prominent one is confidentiality, because really we cannot put our data that are trusted on us on any kind of infrastructures, and this is something that we are very aware of. The second hurdle is reliability. And with that respect, we saw really very impressive progress. So if you have sourced information, if you have a training, you may actually reach quite satisfactory reliability with regard to these tools. And of course, as mentioned by all of us, humans have to remain in the loop. So now regarding future hurdles, if we used AI to make decisions, it would be in another dimension. For example, if we used it to rate on some dimensions institutions, we need first to have transparency and explainability of the tools that we use. We clearly cannot show up with a rating to an institution and not be able to explain it, even from a legal point of view. And the second point that we have to take into account is the risk of bias. And of course, if we train the tools on certain data, we will come up with some bias, again, some kind of institutions, and really we have to take that into account and to correct this bias in some way. Finally, to conclude, so there have been really use cases that have been flourishing these years. But actually now we are thinking that we need really to take a step back and think about our processes, really put them and think about how not copy existing processes, but really redesign our processes, really to harness the benefits of AI in climate supervision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Remy. This is really inspiring and interesting because many supervisors have been taking some first steps. But I think, as you said, the internal organization component to actually scaling up the methods, if wanted, is a super important one. So I was wondering for you also, as a follow-up now, how do you handle the issue of internal responsibility for certain decisions or like certain assessments being undertaken? And second, if a financial institution went to you saying like, okay, we use AI in our investment process, for example, in sustainable finance, in this and that way, laying out the different use cases, which question would you ask them?
So regarding our internal process, we did not reach the stage at which AI would propose decision. So really now it's a tool that we really handle, and there is no, we did not face this issue yet. Regarding institution using AI, we would require the same demand as we ask on ourselves, that is to say transparency, explainability. We know that it's already used massively in some domains. And also we are very much aware in the risk of bias, for example, in granting credits. And it's something also that we are looking at.
Thank you very much. So having learned about what you want to learn from financial institutions about how they use it, for example, we now move to a different area, which is basically the energy use. And I'm happy to have some inputs from Francesca La Rosa. She is Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellow at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology and also a fellow at the University of Zurich, working on climate finance and AI at the very intersection.
Yes, thank you for having me. I work exactly as Julia was saying around the climate and sustainability trade-offs of AI, which are as known as party killers, basically, as a topic. Because on one hand, I try to estimate the benefit of AI for climate and sustainability purposes, but on the other, I try to compute the actual footprint or the cloud print of AI systems. And you can do it in different ways, either looking at the energy that AI consumes or broadening a bit the picture and not just looking at the direct needs, energy needs of AI, but also the implications that AI has on the economy. And I think that I've heard, like, since this morning, I noted down some words which to me are always very fascinating: transformative, enabling, speaking of capital and AI, so they share this thing. And then also during the panel, we talk a lot about speed, automation. We tend to say that AI helps you doing more things. We tend to look at efficiency gain. We tend to look at incremental gains. We tend to actually look at how you can transform the process mostly via automation. And I'm very happy that actually the panel, you can tell that the panel knows exactly what they're talking about, because they're not just talking about automation, but also about the generative AI, the chatbots, so everything that also AI can create rather than only automate. And these are impacts that do matter from a climate perspective. And we should question a bit more, really, what is the impact of efficiency on the actual production and consumption chain. So AI transforms the way we do things because it tends to scale, automate, and do more. AI transforms mostly the channels that we use to do things in the financial sectors because, for example, it can craft the new financial products for a very specific new set of users. So it actually augments inclusions of some of those typically excluded portions of the population, women, young consumers, also geographically speaking. And AI also transforms the places we're going to have businesses, because through generative AI, you can see where capital is misallocated or not adequately transferred, and this means new markets and new opportunities. So these are clear benefits. But the moment that we are implementing efficiency, what does it mean in terms of the actual footprint of what we do? Are we consuming more? And I want to make an example that I think is very explicit. The mining industry and heavy emitters are huge users of AI for obvious reasons. They have very complex, costly, expensive, and complicated processes to manage. AI can solve many of the pitfalls that they have, reduce that cost, really increase efficiency in operation. But this means that when you're applying AI to, for example, exploration of the mining companies, they can explore more, find more, dig more. It may not have any climate impact at all, but we don't know. So as every proper academic out there, I'm not here to actually provide any solution, because that's not our job. We're here to pose more questions and so mess up a bit. That's our job. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is really we don't know. And we don't know how to measure it. And here it comes like a self-critical aspect as academics, and even some of the models that the industry uses. We tend to project transition risk or manage or measure physical risks in very specific ways without taking into account the digital transition that is happening as we speak. If every sector out there deploys AI massively and massive scale, this means that the impact or the transition plans of that sector will be changed. And as academics, as researchers, as practitioners in the financial industry, we should really question the models that we are using as we speak, because we tend to look at the digital and green transition separately, but they're actually the same thing, transformative. So we should first measure the AI penetration at sector level, the AI contribution on productivity, worker and capital. We still don't know. There is a very nice paper, working paper out there by not a random guy, but the Nobel Prize in Economics that tries to do that. But we're still far from understanding how much is actually AI helping you to produce better at margin, not on average, okay, at margin. Once you conclude that you can assess the actual impact of AI on productivity, then you can project in the future, and maybe the transition plans at company and sector level will be changed. I want to close just by saying that we tend to ask a lot about what AI can do for finance, but it's actually important to also ask what finance can do for AI. I'm basically quasi-quoting. And it's important for finance, for sustainable finance, to understand that you need to finance also sustainable AI. The moment that you don't know how AI is, what is AI, what is powering AI, what is powering the data centers, you may promote like the digital economy to increase efficiency, but you're actually also supporting a non-green economy at the very same time. So yesterday there was a big plan unveiled by a very famous CEO, who I'm not naming, of a very big tech that has a short hair, but I'm not naming it, that he tweeted or X'd it, I don't know how to say, let's say tweeted, that they have big plans, his company, to build gigantic data center, data factories, data farms, as big as the size of Manhattan. What is the impact of climate changes on those data factories? We don't know. What is the impact of, say, increasing heat on those data factories once every sector depends on those data factories? What happens if that data center stops working as we speak? These are things that will impact our transition plans. These are things that will impact our physical damages. So on one hand, we need to power sustainable AI. On the other, we need to include AI in our estimation models way more, and then assess the climate and transition and physical impacts that we're seeing today. Because it's true that if we want, and we will have it, a digital economy, that digital economy will be fragile as well as our non-digital economy to climate impacts. But we still don't know to what extent, we still don't know to what degrees, and most importantly, we don't know who is going to win out of this and who is going to lose out of this. As I said, it's a very party-killing thing, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca, also for crashing the party and for raising flags in terms of how we might need to also reconsider our entire approach and framing of the question AI in the context of sustainable finance, in the context of green economy. You raised important words in terms of fragility, what would happen if, and so on and so forth. So to which extent do you see resilience in the context of sustainable finance and AI being underrepresented in our debates, and to which extent do you think we should move ahead to integrate more resilience considerations, and if so, like how?
So everyone who has been working on sustainable finance will remember that there has been a very big debate about public-private partnership for a very long time. What is the actual beneficial gain in having public actors coming together with private actors to support mobilization of capital that goes into green? The same idea can be applied to AI for climate and sustainability. So as we speak, there is large investments from at least 4 big tech companies that are actually committing more than the entire climate pledge that all the countries at the UN signed. So they are a force, they are a power in place. When they build their infrastructure, they may decide to go green and power their infrastructures with low carbon resources. And normally they can sell this low carbon energy into the market, benefiting every consumer out there. So we hope, that they actually decide to go green so that we can also have online green produced energy. But the infrastructure that allows that energy to flow into our communities is not private, is public, and is not designed to support all this workload coming massively from so many resources. So in that case, we're not resilient infrastructure-wise, grid-wise. We may want to transition with the actual source of power, but we need to think about the infrastructure that support a digital and clean economy as well. And there I see a lot of space for this public-private partnership model, where the states and countries declare what their needs for updating the grid is, and very big players such as private companies that are really a force, and the governance now somehow player can step in and support this transition for the benefit of their profit and the collective being.
Thank you so much. I would now like to move to some interaction amongst us at the panel first, and then give you some time to think through your own questions in the panel. So to the panel, your own questions to our great speakers. I mean, having heard everything like from, on the one hand side, the regulatory side, the use cases, other people working on data, and the energy side of things, these I would like to address you first, like asking, what would be your core concern moving ahead with how you did business for the past years?
In terms of where we're standing as an organization, or for the ecosystem at large?
You can start with the ecosystem, and if you want to say something on you as an organization, also happy to hear.
Okay. For ecosystem, I guess we always don't talk about the falsifiability point or the black box point. So I think I would just say that again, because I think it is a big issue. And I think it's a big issue, especially when we're starting to need to answer such more complex problems, as you so beautifully just put together now, Francisca. So, you know, we do need to guide capital and make decisions that are actually leading to, well, firstly, we need to understand the issues, as you say, and then we actually need to guide capital to the outcomes that are going to address those issues. And if we don't really understand the analysis and models and conclusions that we're using, we're basically just fumbling in the dark. So I do think that's a big issue, and I think from a governance point of view and a builder point of view and a user point of view, it's something that we should all sort of hold ourselves accountable to, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then just from a macro perspective, I thought it was so interesting listening to you, Francisca, because I always go back and forth myself. I just read the IEA's report on energy and AI, and I always think, you know what, humans are so optimistic. We always think that efficiency gains are going to solve everything, and it never in history has, because we always just consume more. So, I mean, it is very refreshing to hear your take that actually we do need to, you know, we can't just have rose-tinted glasses on. We don't actually know if it's going to get better or worse, if we're going to consume more or less, if we're going to completely overload the grids, or if AI can help solve the grid problem. And on top of that, the geopolitical, sort of the spatial aspect to it, I think is very important, given all of climate change's impact on different countries and everything that we're going to see there. So as I listen to you, I just, you know, want to reiterate, we're going to a hugely complex future, and we need tools that can kind of help us navigate that, basically.
Yeah, speaking of hugely complex futures, I think that's the area where, Remy, you and the supervision also comes in. I mean, your entire task is basically to safeguard the financial stability of both like individual institutions, but also the financial system itself. And having like this macro perspective in terms of, okay, we are now not at a stage where AI is treated as, okay, nice to have, data and disclosure is good. The next stage that it might take is the question, who takes decisions? How are they taken? Who's responsible? But also how do we ensure resilience of entire systems to that? In the financial markets, I assume there's huge potential for misinformation, misinterpretation also of the data, speaking of Gen AI, and also then herding. Like how do you make your head around this complex scenery evolving?
No, indeed, what is really important is resilience, because when things are extremely uncertain, and when you are in a Knightian uncertainty, you need first to build the resilience of the institutions, to have a strong capital basis, to have contingency plans, and indeed, totally concur that AI may increase risk overall of fraud, the risk of cyber attacks, the risk of also financial market reaction if the decisions are made by AI, which is already partly the case. This resilience is the key to the stability of the financial system.
And we're still working on how to best ensure that, given the evolving landscape, I guess. So, Cem, what what resonates with you. Like if you hear, okay, we will face a highly complex world, the regulators will do something at some point, like it's basically a ping pong between people in the real economy proposing projects, you're about to finance something, having people stepping in saying, hey, okay, this might increase or decrease financial resilience, economic resilience. How would you like start us off in terms of how to manage that future?
Well, I mean, what I'm going to say will not surprise you because it's an old idea called systems thinking. So as an institution, we try to embed it into next green economy transition strategy, taking implementation of AI as part of the broader energy system that feeds the other systems, agricultural, industrial, etc., which are intersecting and interlinked altogether. And we are trying to promote investments that takes into account these systemic aspects. So what we are looking for in our investment projects are those cascading positive impacts. For example, we are investing in a data factory construction in Poland, which is, I mean, going to be powered by renewable energy and using lots of measures to decrease water consumption, etc. And cumulatively, this will empower these relatively laggard economies. Poland is not laggard in this sense, but there are lots of economies which, I mean, lack basic infrastructure such as grids, I mean, data factories, etc. So we try to also bridge those gaps in certain laggard economies so that they can keep up with this unjust super AI race that is going on between certain countries in the world. I mean, because it's highly concentrated, I think it's a systemic risk as well, and it's going to be a serious systemic risk for the financial sector as well, eventually, because everybody will start to work with, I mean, they are already working with the same hyperscalers, which we don't need to, I mean, because there are few of them. If everybody starts to work with the same big companies, it's a systemic issue because, I mean, you never know. I mean, we are living in a fragmented world now. So what we are trying to do as a bank is to at least think about those aspects when investing in a project or program or creating a new instrument. That's what I can say, to be honest. Also, it's a new territory for us as well. I mean, we have never been in such a multipolar world since the world wars.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge that we all face in general, and I think the good thing working on both AI and sustainable finance is really a learning by doing job. So people who like to learn are good at this, and I think well suited for what they do and need to do. But for bigger organizations, I assume sometimes it's quite uncomfortable position to be in, because learning by doing it is not necessarily what larger institutions are used to. I know that some of the more agile fintech people here might feel more comfortable, like adapting to this world and their own workflows and processes. I'm looking at the time, and I think we have 15 minutes left. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity of you and the public asking questions. So, okay, I open that up, and I would love to take 3 first, then have a round of answers, and then take another 3 first. So let's go 1. You're in the, maybe it's easier with the mic if we go by row. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. And would you please state your name and your affiliation?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I'm Zishan Ali. I'm coming from the Commonwealth Secretariat. And thank you for having this discussion. This is so interesting and so futuristic in nature. And it covers a wide range of dimensions. I want to draw the attention of Sam. He spoke about, probably $10 trillion is something which is needed in the sustainable finance, achieving the sustainable development goals, and globally, the multilaterals contributing to 2 to 3 trillions, in this space, to this vast funding gap to finance these sustainable development in emerging economies, least developed countries. And I was recently in Spain attending the 4th International Financing Conference for Development, where the countries came and pledged for improving this financial market ecosystem. You spoke about AI as an enabler while working with EBRD in addressing this funding gap. You spoke about efficiency. Is there anything beyond efficiency that you have been able to focus on using AI to bridge this funding gap? For example, we all agree that it's not just a public finance that will be able to address this funding gap. You need to bring a lot of private capital, for example. Private investors are typically reluctant to invest in these type of asset classes in typically vulnerable economies. Do you think AI can also contribute in building those confidence within the private investors at some point of time by bringing better set of regulations, better set of transparency, accountability, and disclosure mechanism? And could EBRD think about venturing into the space as to how risk mitigation could be an enabler to attract private investment, and how AI can contribute in this space?
Thank you very much. The next question was there. If you can give the mic just further down the room. Thank you. And I would like to remind you to keep your questions short and concise because we're running out of time otherwise. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Short and concise, okay. My name is Alex Clark. I'm head of research at Asset Impact. We actually spun out the same organization that Tilt did just a few years ago. And we've been using AI, I think, as Lisa will probably be unsurprised to hear, to very quickly understand corporate disclosures and compare them to asset-based data, because we build the picture of a company's emissions on that basis. And there are risks associated with that, but I'm just curious as to whether you also think that it's much harder for a corporation who's trying to hide things when you've got such a powerful engine for understanding where the weasel words are, how apples and oranges are being compared, which has historically been such a problem with climate disclosures. Do you think it'll be a case of all boats rising because it's so much harder to hide? And just a second question, if I can, to Francesca. You were mentioning some of the work of established economists to try and get their heads around this problem. Is it your view that the existing tools of academic economics are suited to the task? Or is the scale of the potentially exponential, completely new change that we're seeing in the next 10 years require an advancement in the field? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. If you could pass on the mic to the person on the right-hand side. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Greenham from the British Business Bank, the UK's venture capital and small business bank. So I actually want to cite some work from the Royal Society of Arts Manufacturers and Commerce, where we did a project a few years ago on deliberative democracy involving citizens in discussing the ethics of AI. And interestingly, the citizens' concerns are reflected in all the things you've said: explainability, transparency, having somebody who is accountable, and also unconscious biases being replicated. So is a human in the loop enough? Does the panel think we need society in the loop?
Would you like to direct your question to someone specifically, or is it just for the entire panel?
I'm interested if any of the panel's organizations or individually have had experience with involving citizens in discussions around AI.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I think we can kick us off with a question that was directed to you, Cham. You could answer first, and then we move to Lise and Francesca.
I'll keep it very short. First of all, I should clarify 2 trillion is channeled as a climate finance, so probably sustainable finance need is much more than that. But the need in climate finance is at least 5-fold. That's what we know at this moment, conservative estimations. What is beyond efficiency? Obviously, in emerging market economies, building transparency and disclosure and quality, reliable data has been a notoriously big challenge, because any kind of regulatory or even voluntary disclosures has been a hurdle for these companies, clients, and FIs in those geographies which operate in a more difficult environment usually. But I think there is a role for AI in supporting their efforts, for example, preparing their transition reports, disclosures, benchmarking, or ensuring interoperability of their disclosures with other standards, because there are now, numerous standards and taxonomies all around. I think these can mitigate some of these challenges for such clients and FIs, and we have been working with them, especially in the last decade, in building that sort of capacity for climate corporate governance, transition planning support, etc. But we are at a very early stage in terms of using AI to support their efforts. But there is a huge ask from our clients already, asking, I mean, how we can utilize these kind of tools to provide you the data needed. I mean, even again, without reaching them, for example, in the first instance, because it's already a challenge for the bankers as well. I mean, to collect information, SMEs, etc. What I can say, society in the loop, it's an excellent point, and although we have civic society participation measures as an MDB, and civic society as a stakeholder constantly contributes to our strategy and decision-making processes, it's not enough. I mean, there should be deliberate, explicit measures and participation mechanisms for civic society and society in general to have a saying in implementation of these tools in decision-making in finance, obviously. So I will take this point and take that home to the relevant parties to ensure that is provided as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, good to hear. Also the positive outlooks, as we heard this morning, outcomes focused. Lisa, what's your take or your response to the concerns?
So if I understood the question correctly, Alex, it was, so obviously there's a risk coming from using AI to estimate GHG emissions in various ways, but then also there's a big benefit to that because companies can't hide, and there's all sorts of positive spin-off effects from that. I think absolutely, for a couple of reasons. I mean, so we also do use asset data, and I know that we've spoken a couple of times, and it's useful for many reasons. We've always taken the view that we want to triangulate what companies say about themselves with what the world is saying, even if that is sort of the best guess that we have based on assets, for example. And we think that's, we've always just thought that it's a really useful way to go, given that companies aren't very good about telling the truth about themselves. And it's not necessarily on purpose. Sometimes it's due to a lack of capacity, a lack of knowledge of how to calculate and report things, and sometimes maybe it is on purpose. But I think, I mean, summary, just to say, I don't necessarily, I was saying this to Julia before the panel, I don't think that company reported data is always better than estimated data, depending on how the estimations are done and depending on, you know, the tools that you're also doing, because company reported data is shocking. Yeah, it's also estimated in many cases. So I think the more that we can triangulate and create tools to sense check, we're probably just moving closer towards the truth every time. So I really appreciate these sorts of methodologies. And then on the, do we need society in the loop? I mean, I think yes, completely. We've always tried to build data sets. I've been talking about the triangulation that we've taken. We've also tried to hear the voices of NGOs and what they're saying about companies and all of that. That's outside of the AI discussion. I'm wondering whether that sort of concept could be expanded to include the AI discussion. And then I'm more just interested in whether our, you know, even if we agree that we need society in the loop, what would that governance look like in the context of financial institutions and those building the tools? So I don't have the answer there, but I do like the question.
Any thoughts on that?
Maybe just on the society in the loop thing. So as working with small businesses, we experience that we need also small businesses on the table. So we do have consultations with them, and especially because when it comes to Gen I, like the models, they are trained also based on Wikipedia, what's out there, and like especially in the sustainable finance field, most is relying on larger companies. I mean, this is the focus on sustainable finance overall. So especially here in this regard, we also saw when it comes to climate actions that there is also a bias towards what climate actions can do large businesses and not smaller ones. So here we try to include them, but it's also very like difficult in the sense of like bringing them together, and like who are you bringing in together, who is like kind of representing also like this majority of businesses out there. So many questions around this still. But I think it's a very valid point to include more from civil society, and also the ones that are then assessed or that are rated, like to kind of get their perspective as well in the whole process. Yeah.
Maybe on financial disclosure and AI. So indeed, AI can be a tool to help to build financial disclosure. One major concern here is that there needs to be ownership of the result, a good understanding of what is published, so that it is used as actually a policy tool by the firms or the banks or insurers. So that's a key point.
Yeah, so I would love to also tackle on the question in terms of the models, but I'm looking at the time, and I would suggest we collect another second round of questions and keep that question also for the last final round of answers then. So, okay, the next round of questions, who would like to? Yeah, I see two persons, one in the back, at the very back, and one person at the right-hand side. And then you can pose your questions. We go back to the panel, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
hello. Sorry. Will Goodhart from the Future of Sustainable Data Alliance. It's sort of slightly picking up on an answer that Lise gave a moment ago, which was about the comparability or the quality of AI-generated data and corporate disclosed data. With the omnibus legislation, we're going to get less disclosed data, and we're going to have more estimation of data. One of the benefits of corporate data is that it's often either audited or assured. That's not the case with AI-generated data. So I suppose in a world of much greater or wider estimations, what do you think might go right and what do you think might go wrong?
Mm-hmm. That's also to the panel in general, or to someone? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben Yo, I'm at RBC. Question for the panel. There's some people who argue essentially for a slow takeoff of AI because of a lot of human bottlenecks and other issues. But there are some arguing for a kind of faster takeoff of AI, and that we might be surprised by sort of the exponential technology that we're seeing here. From your interactions with your kind of stakeholders or customers groups, I'd be interested if you lean more towards fast takeoff or slow takeoff. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's, again, another round of super interesting questions. I would like to start with Francesca, also keeping in mind the other question from the round before. And then, yeah, let's move on.
So regarding the suitability of academic of tools that we know in economics is an hard no, but not necessarily no, as they're not suitable because of the pace and the ubiquitous nature of AI, so it's very difficult to extract just the AI factor. But I think the most relevant stuff is that we tend to measure impact on decision making, while for climate we should measure the impact on action. Then there is a gap between what you decide and what you do, mostly as an individual. Then as a financial institution, probably not. But I think there exists a gap that is still very important, and in AI it would be better to estimate the impact of AI on action that you are taking for climate, which has a different cascade implication for models, but I'm very happy to talk about it offline. And I think slow or fast, I wouldn't go neither for the slow or the fast. I believe in regulation that supports innovation. I think there are very clear examples, like think about the smoking ban. Regulation came in and decided to prohibit people to actually smoking in closed places, preventing people from basically dying from passive and active smoking. Without that regulation, at this point, we would not be here. So regulation is important. The uptake can be very fast, but somehow monitored and under control. You don't want to know what is growing inside your society without knowing what is growing inside your society. You want to be sure where you want to redirect these things beforehand. And so, and I'm going to close, it may be that before deploying some of the most impactful applications in AI, we need to test them in a society-agreed environment, exactly as the pharma industry does with their products. So nothing new somehow under the sun.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to answer to some of the other additional questions? I think, Lise, you were directly addressed, and yeah, you have an additional comment. So, Cem, you start, and then Lise, we can.
No, I mean, very quickly about the, less disclosure data, more estimations point. I think it's not necessarily bad, but it depends on how you complement those data points. I mean, there are a number of novel methods that you can, collect or generate without any consultation to the firm or looking at their disclosure. Because in the end, even though they are audited, they are company narratives approved by audit companies. I mean, I'm not questioning the integrity, but they are still narratives, selected narratives that those companies are providing us. For example, with the use of geospatial data in combination of AI, I mean, things are getting easier to collect, at least, for example, for deforestation data. I mean, you can actually look at and see, even, I mean, on near real time, whether the real impact is there or not. I mean, or is it something that company claims, I mean, and you see something different, then there's a problem. So I think it depends on the versatility and robustness of the tools we are using as a how to say, assessing organization, let's say. Obviously, slow or fast AI is the issue. I think my observation in my own organization varies. I mean, there is a Cambrian explosion of AI-related tools. They're being used wildly, they are fastly adopted, but without, going unnoticed by all colleagues. I mean, this is inevitable human nature. I think it's pretty much everywhere. It's the same thing, but people are hiding that they are using various tools from each other. But this reminds us it's more than a technological problem, it's a cultural problem. I mean, the AI adoption, and especially ethically inclusive and sustainable AI adoption is a cultural problem, and this transformation has to address those challenges, because it's not all about models or technical aspects. It's all about changing the behaviors of people, how they use it, whether it's responsible or not, or whether ethical or not.
Thank you. Your comment.
On the estimations question, I mean, it's a nice question, and I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night and have some aha moment about it, because it's an important one. But I think with these things, we have a utopian and a dystopian future, and we're probably going to land somewhere in the middle, hopefully. But one way that it could work out is that there are actually areas in which very, very good estimations that we can triangulate and check might actually be more useful than company-reported data. And that, things like methane, maybe emissions in the future, deforestation, but where we still need company-reported data is the expectations and the targets and the promises they set, so that we can hold companies accountable to that. So if we, with AI, pick up that there's been like a severe human rights incident, and we try to hold the companies to account. If we don't have their policy that promised, ILO standards or UNGP alignment, then we can't hold them accountable, and, they can just say, well, I never promised anything. So we do need sort of company disclosures of targets and promises, and it could be a world in which we get sort of more performance and real-life tracking against those targets from alternative sources.
Thank you. So we are already at the running also over time, and we're eating into our break. So I suggest that everyone at the panel just quickly summarizes in one sentence what's your key takeaway for your desk next week's, which you take from this panel, and what are you excited about and looking forward to? I will start with you, Anne.
Yeah, so So I think my takeaway is that when we use AI, that we always think about the outcome that we want to have with this usage. So really thinking about what is the impact in the end, and also can we justify, as Francesca was mentioning, also the harm that AI might have for the planet.
Well, I think it would be important to incorporate way more social science in the AI development from the very beginning. I know the resources are scarce, but that's something that probably may benefit both the developer and the user.
A ChatGPT-like response. I think the cure should not be amplifying the disease itself, so we should use it sustainably and ethically and inclusive. And I think human and society should be on the loop all the time, and there should be novel, governance mechanism. Probably we should focus on developing, because they're not existing yet.
Not to repeat what has been already said, I would say that really with AI, you really need not to copy process, but really to re-engineer your processes and to rethink the way you are working in the light of AI.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I echo everything everyone said, and I'm left with the question of, do we need some sort of body in our space to have these discussions and kind of co-design principles and hold each other to account? And I don't know, I mean, all of this was very exciting, and also like the amount of unanswered questions we have still comes to light. So I'll leave that on the table maybe.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm also excited about the amount of unanswered questions that we've collected, because I am a researcher, so I think it's a good position to begin to work on exactly that frontier. I'm super happy that we had a very rich panel of various perspectives, and I think one of the core takeaways is the system thinking and the resilience questions are still unsolved. You said the governance questions are super important as well. And I think what has also been raised about the ownership, the more we use AI, who takes the decisions, but also who owns the decisions, who wants to take them, and also in the end, who's responsible. So this being said, as we realize it goes far beyond sustainable finance as a core topic, and I think we're in the midst of the green digital transformation and transition, as you named it. And with that, I'm happy to leave us for more interpersonal debates and questions at the break. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.